To congratulate Swadeshi Research Institute and Dr. Agarwal and Mr. Vyas for organizing this seminar, very short notice, on a topic which is of absorbing interest to anybody connected with business and industry. It is still very soon after the event, so whatever any of us can say is by way of hypothesis. Only time will tell whether the actual events will follow this hypothesis or not. But a few pointers we can take from the statistics of the voting. Dr. Agarwal has already mentioned that the voting in England was against staying, whereas the voting in Scotland and Northern Ireland was for staying. And in addition, if we look at the demographics, it appears that the older and poorer voters wanted Brexit, whereas the better educated and better off voters were in favor of staying with Europe. I have lived in England for several years and I have British relatives by marriage. What I gather is the vote in favor of Brexit was not a well thought out logical decision. It was a sort of gut reaction. The older and poorer voters especially felt that Britain, where the local population is not increasing, it is static or even declining, is being swamped by people from outside. This was the feeling which led to the Immigration Act of 1971, which effectively barred most immigration from the erstwhile Commonwealth countries. And this time it is the same fear that if Britain remained a part of the European Union, it will not be able to stop immigration from Syria and immigration from Libya. Syria is quite close to the Greek islands, and we see every day people from Syria risking their lives in small boats to reach the Greek islands. And once they can set foot in a Greek island close to Syria or to Turkey, they become refugees in Europe. And if they're given refugee status, if they're given migrant status, they don't want to stay in Greece because Greece is an economically troubled country, but they head for the more prosperous countries of Europe, like Germany, Sweden, and also UK. And if Britain remains a part of Europe, there will be no legal way of stopping this huge influx from Syria and other countries in the Middle East. And certainly the English people do not wish to have their country dominated, especially these days where IS is very strong in Syria and many IS operatives could smuggle themselves into Europe under the guise of migrants. Similarly is the case with Sicily. Sicily is very close to Libya. Again, one can reach Sicily on small boats from Libya. And again, once they can reach the islands of Sicily, then they can migrate from Sicily again into the more rich Western European nations, including UK. It is this visceral fear of being swamped by immigrants, especially Muslim immigrants, that has led many voters, older and poorer voters, to vote for Brexit. It is not economic logic. I think most of the voters who have voted for Brexit are not educated enough to analyze the pros and cons. They have just voted to keep out immigrants, and especially Muslim immigrants, because now there is almost reversal to the days of the Crusades, where the Christian nations are standing face to face with the Muslim nations. And they just do not want, the English just do not want a situation where a large part of their population, total population, consists of immigrants from Asia and Africa, and that too with militant religious orientation. And more than any economic logic, I think it is this fear of being swamped by immigration from Asia and Africa of people adhering to the Muslim faith that has led to this Brexit vote. Also, the other fear is that Britain has long been used to being the leading nation of the world. From 1947 onwards, even after independence of various colonies and dependencies, Britain was looked on as the center of many world activities. And now suddenly the British people find that instead of ruling other parts of the world, they will be ruled from Brussels. Now, in a period of 70 years, that is a tremendous change of attitude the British people will have to undertake. That instead of ruling 2/3 of the world, they are going to be ruled from Brussels. And that orientation, I think, is the second biggest cause for the Brexit vote. If this vote leads to breaking of Scotland and Northern Ireland away from United Kingdom, in fact, this will be the biggest constitutional change since the 17th century Act of Union, which led to the creation of the United Kingdom. That Scotland, through some very complicated marriage in the royal family, joined with England to form the United Kingdom. And if Scotland chooses to remain in Europe and England breaks away, then I think Northern Ireland will follow Scotland. There are close religious and ethnic links between Northern Ireland and Scotland. So we have a situation that the United Kingdom effectively falls apart. There is no United Kingdom anymore, because United Kingdom consisted of England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. So if two of the components break away, then really there is no United Kingdom. It will revert to being England, which it was in the 16th century. Yes. And constitutionally, I think the position of the head of state will have to be given serious thought, because the present Queen is in fact half Scottish. Her mother was full Scottish. And if Scotland chooses to break away, then will she remain Queen of Scotland? Or will Scotland go for the presidential form of government? And in fact, just in a lighter vein, the Queen's favorite royal residence is the palace in Balmoral, Edinburgh, and the country estate in Balmoral. And she chooses to spend about half the year in Balmoral. So will she need a passport to go to her own palace in future? But anyway, these are things which will have to be sorted out in due course. But certainly it will be a change, because the British Constitution, though unwritten, is the model for the constitutions of something like 50 countries in the world. So the mother constitution will be undergoing a very serious change, and it will be interesting to see what will emerge in future. As far as the economic side is concerned, I would reiterate that in my view, the decision was not an economic decision. It was a visceral decision, firstly an anti-immigrant decision, and secondly decision based on being dictated from Belgium instead of dictating to half the world. But from the economic point of view, as far as India is concerned, I think the statistics show India is the second or third largest investor in UK. And that was partly because UK entry into the UK market gave access to 500 million market throughout Europe. Once you entered Europe with a factory or a office or something, software center, you could sell freely throughout Europe. Now with Brexit, that will no longer be the case. The entry into England would give access only to 50 million people, not to 500 million people. So I think that the FDI from India into UK, which is an enormous figure every year, that will come down sharply. And India, I don't think, will be the second or third largest FDI investor in UK anymore. If Indian companies wish to invest in Europe, they would probably now choose Frankfurt or some other country which remains in the European Union. Because by itself, the British market will be quite small compared to the European Union market. But this may not be the case as far as the financial market is concerned. The London financial market is one of the leading in the world, among the top 2 or maybe the top 3. But perhaps the financial markets may not be so much influenced by not having a huge hinterland anymore. If you look at the other financial markets like Zurich or Dubai or Singapore, none of them have huge hinterlands. In fact, they have no hinterlands at all. But they remain enormously powerful financial markets. Dubai doesn't even have oil. Unlike other Arab capitals, Dubai doesn't even have oil. But it has built up a financial infrastructure of such magnitude that it is the prime Arab financial center. I think even after Brexit, London will continue to be the main financial center, like Zurich and Singapore. This is, of course, a hypothesis. Time will tell, because a huge number of jobs in England are dependent on the financial markets. In fact, the whole of the city of London is dependent on the financial markets. So along with Scotland breaking away, there is a move in the city of London that the city of London will also break away and not join England, because they're worried that in case the Brexit affects the financial markets, then it will be difficult to keep many of the jobs. Britain is now hardly got any jobs in the traditional industries like steel and coal. The European Union was initially formed as the European Steel and Coal Market. When the European Union, the predecessor of the European Union, the European Coal and Steel Community was set up in just after the war, it was basically based on coal and steel. And from there it went to European Economic Community, and from there it went to European Union. But in the present time, Britain is hardly producer of coal and steel. It has gone into other types of activities, principally the financial activity. So if London is no longer a big financial market, it will have a huge impact, absolutely incalculable impact on the job situation in England. So that alone, I think, will give an impetus. Already there is talk of London not joining Brexit, of breaking away and along with Scotland remaining in Europe. So that again is a different dimension, which again time will tell what the actual situation will be. Well, friends, these are just some preliminary thoughts. This is just 7 days old, and I don't think any of us really know what the future holds. But I would agree with Dr. Agarwal that as far as the Indian economy is concerned, it is no longer tied to the apron strings of England. That ties have gradually got loosened over the last 70 years. And we in this country may not really feel much pinch after the BREXIT. Our rate of growth is one of the highest of any major economy, and fairly soon we will be, I think, a major economic center like USA and Europe. We'd be talking of India, Europe, and China and United States as the 4 major centers. So as far as we are concerned, initial thing maybe our holidays in England may get slightly cheaper with the pound sterling depreciating by 10%. But other than that, I don't think there'll be anything very major for us. We I think, are in a fairly strong position. Well, friends, that's all I have to say by way of initial observations. I hand the floor back.